All right, a rare appearance above ground for me in the garage today. Feels a little bit weird being in here and not right, but I'm here to go ahead and open up this new combo rack from Hansu as they just relaunched. They had this on sale for around $2,000 initially, down to $1,800 if you used my code on top of it. It has since gone back up in price, but it's still a relatively well-priced combo rack for what you get. At least I think it is. You may recall I've done a review on one of their previous combo racks, which I actually really liked, and I had some critiques on it, and Hansu had taken those critiques and apparently implemented them into this new combo rack. So I'm excited to put it together and see what it is. As you can tell, it ships in a pallet. This thing came from California to me in Rhode Island. It took roughly a week. Very well packaged and put together, no damage, no boxes that are going to be dinged around. We'll see what it looks like on the inside, but the first time they sent this to me, it was a very similar experience, so I have high hopes for it. So let's open this up, bring it downstairs, and take a look at what we got.
Two hours later.
All right, so it is later in the day. I actually had to do some work-related stuff. So after I got all this down, I went up, did work, took my kids to basketball practice, had dinner, put them down. So it's now 7:45 in the evening. Everything's laid out. I'm just gonna go ahead and open this all up and put it together. Everything well packaged, everything bubble wrapped. I don't think there's any damage to anything because everything's covered. Nothing was sticking out or poking out. But we'll put this together and I'll update you when it's done. All right, so the combo's all built. It took just an hour, right on the dot, in fact. Now, obviously, a big part of that was unbubbling everything, cutting tape, building things like the bench, but the actual assembly went really, really quick. And one of the things that expedited it was one of the suggestions they had first time, which was limiting the amounts of hardware that you needed to connect, meaning that the first time there was like 3 or 4 different bolt sizes that you needed to account for. In this case, there's only one single bolt size, so I just needed a 24mm socket. They actually provide you a really nice wrench with this, not one of those cheap, thin wrenches that you oftentimes see with imported racks. They send you one like you would actually go and buy at a hardware store, which was nice. And then it came with 2 Allen wrenches. Now, in my case, I suggest using a socket. If you have it, it makes it go even quicker. But the equipment provided is really nice. And like I said, there's one socket or one wrench and then 2 different size Allen wrenches, and that's all you need. So very quick and easy, which is very much appreciative. Now, I did mention initially that everything was bubbled nicely and packed nicely. There's no damage to the box. That being said, however, I did notice a couple of scuffs on the equipment itself. I think it just has to do with the quality of paint, as well as even though everything was packaged well, this is heavy equipment and it is in an open box. So maybe trying to secure it a little bit better with some extra cardboard or packaging inside could help that. I'll try to show you some of the stuff in some B-roll, but otherwise it came in fairly good shape. There was also a couple of spots of rust on the actual just steel uprights, but again, I think I can clean that up pretty easy. And overall, I think if you bought this bench when it was on sale for like $1,800 after code, it is a fantastic deal. If you didn't buy it, you're probably thinking, damn, I should have bought that. That does look pretty nice. That's a great price. Right now, I believe the retail price is $2,999. If you use a code, it knocks down to $27. So in the realm of actual heavy duty combo racks, which this thing is a beast. It is beefy. It's still a really good price when you consider getting something like from Texas Strength Systems is going to set you back about $4 grand. Getting something from Rogue about $4 grand as well. If you're looking at an Eleiko rack, that's around $6,000 to $6,500, depending on how much shipping is going to be to you. Or if you get like a Ghost rack through Rogue or some of the other racks out there like ER even, you're going to pay more than this rack cost regardless. So I think it is a good deal. Some other things just off the bat, again, I have not used this yet, I just put it together. Just want to comment that I really noticed is I like on the actual uprights and adjustment pieces, they kind of took my suggestion by putting the numbers on the back. So if you're working the arms and trying to load this, you don't have to peer around the side anymore, which is really nice and convenient. That being said, they also shortened the actual pins here. Before they were really long, so when you loaded a plate, you'd actually hit the pins potentially. In this case, there is a stopper on here that prevents them from going any further, so you should never really hit any plates on that. They've also kind of changed a little bit of the UHMW on here. Before it said IPF all over the rack, which I thought was a little cringy, if you will. They've taken that off. It does say Hansu Power on the top. On the bottom, I still actually have the plastic that I need to peel off. They did not change the front lips in terms of adding UHMW, but one of the things they did is they angled them out slightly. So when the bar is in the front of the catches, it's not going to completely rub against the lip like it did in the past. You'll see these on a lot of other racks as well. So I think that is an upgrade, although I still would like a little bit of plastic here just for my own use at home. In competition, most people don't care because it's not their equipment, it's not their bars, and they don't care if the knurling really gets beat up. Another thing that would change is the actual arms themselves. They are much shorter. Before, when they're in this position, they actually went out and almost touched the end of this platform at the end. So they've shortened them quite a bit, which means they're a lot easier to use and easier to store, which I think is going to be important. On the spotter arms themselves, not much has changed here. One of the things you'll note on the pins is they've actually sunk in a hole a little bit. So it's about a half of an ellipse. That way it can actually sit in the spotter arm quite nicely. Before it was just a straight cut piece of metal. So now they sit in there a little bit better and make it just even a little bit more secure. Speaking of secure, I did note on the initial rack, I didn't like the actual screws that they gave you. They had these big, huge, bright silver end pieces. They've switched to this other design. I'm not sure I love it necessarily, but I think overall it looks a little bit better. It can be a little bit annoying to unscrew some of these, but again, if you're using them at home, you're probably not gonna be putting these uprights in very often. You're probably just gonna leave the face savers in at all time. So that is one thing. One thing I'm not really sure on is the actual attachment of the bench itself. So how the bench attaches is pretty similar. It has these screws in here. I did note that one was a little bit off center, and it could just be I need to take this apart and put it back together a little bit better, but it was a little bit of an annoyance. So that's not something I'm a big fan of, how the bench attaches necessarily, but if I'm using this by myself, again, it's easy to change in and out, or in some cases, I might not even attach those screws to begin with. Speaking of the bench, I did note last time I wasn't a fan of the pad. This pad is definitely better. It is a little bit more of a grippy material. It is, however, a very stiff pad. Again, I have not used it, so I'll give you some feedback as I continue to use it. I do like the branding on the bench itself. Underneath, there's actually two extra kind of mount points, if you will. I think that what that's for potentially was initially they were going to put like a logo banner beneath it, or if you're buying this and want to create your own, it's going to give you an opportunity to mount something or customize this just a little bit, which I think is nice, but the bench is super heavy overall. It does have wheels, but because of where the spotter deck is and the feet kind of sticking out towards the back, you don't really get a high angle on the lift to move this around, and it's a little bit cumbersome because again, the bench is so big and beefy, which is a pro or a con, depending how you're looking at it. It's a pro from a home user standpoint because it makes the overall unit really sturdy. It's a con from a promoter or meet director standpoint because moving the bench in and out or trying to find a place for it after you've moved on from bench press or whatever the case, maybe you're putting it back in after squats have finished, is just more of an annoyance than anything. But overall, like I said, for the price, depending on how you get it, I do think this is an improvement over the last model, which again, I really liked. The last model, as you may note that I had, was more of a off grayish model, which I wasn't a big fan of. The black does look a lot better. It's gonna be interesting to see what they do going forward, because when they initially teased some of these new IPF style racks they were doing, there was a bunch of different colors and they were pretty far out colors. I'm talking like pink and orange and green, stuff that you probably don't really see too often. So I'm curious to see if they'll end up bringing those back. But I do like the black, it matches in well, and I'm gonna put this to some use and I'll give you an update once I've actually gone ahead and used it. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.